Hello and welcome to this Credo Fund Manager presentation. I'm Damien Yeomans, Head of Investment Distribution at Credo. Today we'll be hearing from Jarrod Cahn, Lead Manager of the Credo Global Equity Fund. Jarrod will be looking at the recent developments with obesity drugs and how this is affecting the investment landscape. Jarrod, welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Damien, for that very warm introduction. So today we're going to discuss obesity drugs, also known as GLP-1s, and the potential disruptive effect that they may have on your portfolio. So to get started, effectively there are two incumbents, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. And over the last 5 years, but in particular over the last 2 years, both of these stocks are up between 500 and 600% versus the MSCI World, which is up about 60%. But probably more importantly is while these stocks have been on a tear, there have been other sectors, including medtech, staples, leisure, and the like, that have been very negatively affected. And the question is, are these stocks so disruptive that you need to move out of the way of certain sectors, or are there opportunities that you can take advantage in your portfolio? So starting at the beginning, you can see that the pharmaceutical sector historically trades between a 10 and 20 times PE multiple. And what you see from this graph is that both Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk have both broken through that trend of the 20 times earnings and are now trading, in the case of Novo Nordisk, around 35 times and Lilly close to around 60 times. Effectively, these companies have become growth stocks. At Credo, we are very much value-orientated investors. So it is quite difficult for us to get comfortable with investing in stocks with such high multiples. Suffice it to say that the fundamentals here are very strong. The growth runway is very impressive. But at the moment, we've decided that they're just not for us. The growth investors can have a go at these companies and we'll just watch from the sidelines. So what is a GLP-1? A GLP-1 is effectively a hormone that is produced in the gut, released after eating, and works to regulate the blood sugar by activating your pancreas. All normal people actually produce this hormone. And what this effectively does is, as I say, increase the blood sugar or regulate the blood sugar that effectively then increases the insulin that you secrete through your pancreas. Type 2 diabetics don't have the ability to actually produce this hormone. So what the GLP-1 agonist does is mimic the effect of the GLP and produces the same kind of effects within the body. And if you just have a look at the diagram on the right-hand side, you can see the various effects of the GLP-1s. So first of all, it slows down the digestion in the system. Secondly, it reduces the glucose release from the liver. Thirdly, and most importantly, increases insulin that is produced within the pancreas, and also sends impulses to the brain to say that you're satiated. GLP-1s have actually been around for a relatively long time. They first started in the 1980s. But the big problem with it is that as this hormone is pushed through the system, it actually gets dissolved very quickly in the bloodstream. So the market actually, or should I say, the scientists lost interest in going forward in terms of producing some kind of new technology because they couldn't find something that could stay in the bloodstream long enough. And effectively, users had to keep injecting themselves multiple times a day. And given that this is just a precursor to insulin users who will, in effect, inject themselves quite regularly, it just wasn't worth the effort. But then in the 1990s, two scientists in Canada actually found that the saliva of the Gila lizard actually contained GLP-1s. And they managed to extract that out of the lizards and then push that through the body stream. And this actually lasted quite a lot longer within the bloodstream and hence was the first kind of consumable GLP-1 that came to the market. And this was brought to the market by Eli Lilly and was called Byetta. Again, it was very unsuccessful because it didn't stay in the bloodstream long enough and people had to keep injecting themselves quite regularly. But then in 2010, Novo Nordisk continued with the science around this, and they actually found a molecular breakdown where they could reconstruct the DNA of a GLP-1, and they launched a drug called Victoza. The diabetes market is relatively huge, At present, there's about 540 million people with diabetes, and that's looking to grow to around 784 million in the next 15 to 20 years. At the moment, there are a number of products on the market. Novo Nordisk has Saxenda, which took over from Vicenza, and now the more important ones on the market are Ozempic and Wegovy, which have been released in around 2021, and Rybelsus, which is their oral product. Likewise, Lilly have Zepbound and Mounjaro. So while these companies were actually looking to produce these drugs for diabetes use, they actually found something way more important. And so in pivotal step 1 trials, Novo Nordisk showed that while people were taking these drugs over a period of about 40 to 50 weeks, their weight loss was significant. In fact, in the Novo Nordisk trials, people were losing weight of between 10 to 15%. And Lilly, with their own drug, was showing that weight loss was somewhere between 15 and 25%. And this is something that historically had never taken place. In fact, if you look at the history of weight loss, there's never been a silver bullet. Between the 1930s and 1960s, the only diet pills were amphetamines, effectively speed, a drug, highly addictive, very harmful, and banned in 1979. During the 1990s, fen-phen came onto the market. These were 2 regulated drugs that put together as a cocktail were there to try and suppress appetite. Clinics opened across the US, and unfortunately, the side effects of these drugs were more significant, causing huge heart damage and leading to very negative press around weight loss drugs. And then in 2010, we had Belvic weight loss drug, which again was recalled because of risk of cancer. So one can imagine that once you have these new weight loss drugs that are coming onto the market, they've hit the market by storm. And so celebrities like Elon Musk and Oprah Winfrey, who actually has been the poster child for Weight Watchers, actually recently resigned from Weight Watchers and said to the world that she was actually on one of the weight loss drugs. She's donated all her stock in Weight Watchers to a charity, and she's now moved on. Obesity is a huge market. If you look at the map, between 30 and 40% of North Americans suffer from obesity, which technically means that they have a body mass index of over 30%. In the UK, the number is between 25 and 30% of people. It's estimated that by 2030, over 1 billion people will have obesity. At the moment, the addressable market is about 764 million, of which only 10% actually seek help. And of those 10%, only 2% get some kind of treatment. So it's no wonder that the market has become so excited by the fact that as more and more people get access to these drugs, the addressable market will increase. And the estimates are that it will be a 100 billion global market share for these drugs over the coming years. But it gets even better, because what's been shown is that obesity has other huge comorbidities. Other than mental things like depression and anxiety, you have mechanical issues, asthma, reflux, physical function, incontinence, knee osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, chronic back pain. And then on the metabolic side, things like gallstones, infertility, diabetes, pre-diabetes, gout, and then cancer, and then all of the heart diseases, which are massive. There are over 200 possible health complications from obesity. It takes up huge resources from governments. Over 3% of global GDP is spent on obesity, and over 8% of healthcare budgets actually go on this issue. But what's interesting is it's been found that weight loss between 0 and 15% has huge effects on these comorbidities. In fact, a 0 to 5% loss of weight reduces hypertension and hyperglycemia. Likewise, 5 to 10 prevents type 2 diabetes, fatty liver diseases, polycystic ovary syndrome. And then the bigger issues, 10 to 15% help with kidney disease, gastroreflux, sleep apnea, and osteoarthritis. And then the cardiovascular diseases and heart failure and diabetes remission when people lose over 15%. So that's why the market is getting so excited over these weight loss drugs. Not only is it actually looking to create some kind of stopping of the issues within diabetes and other big comorbidities, but in fact, it's helping with a lot of other issues as well. But the jury's not out yet. These drugs are fairly new, and we don't quite know what the side effects are. Clearly, a few of the more important side effects have been things like constipation, vomiting, indigestion, which again, people can live with, given that they have such huge effects on weight loss. About 1 in every 6 person comes off the drug. Thyroid cancer has been picked up, but at this stage, as I say, it's too early to say what the actual impacts are going to be. So what are the drawbacks? One of the biggest drawbacks is the cost. Once you come onto this drug, it's very difficult to come off it because it's been shown that within 6 months of coming off the drug, you actually put the weight back on. So you're almost perpetually on this drug for life. In the US, the drug costs between $1,000 and $1,300. This is far more significant cost-wise than the rest of the world. And the main reason for that is because of how the medical insurance system works in the US. So in the US, you have effectively 3 medical people that provide cover. You have the government that has Medicaid, which is done on a state-by-state basis, and they go in and they buy drugs accordingly. And then you have Medicare, which is, again, something that's given to the people over the age of 65. At the moment, Medicare is prohibited by law to cover weight loss treatments. And this probably goes back to the 1990s, from the fen-phen debacle, where the US government took the view that obesity is not a disease, it's actually a way of life. And the US government wasn't prepared to carry the balance sheet for people who were eating what they want and didn't exercise. And for this reason, this has kind of been the stigma that's been attached to obesity and the effects of obesity and the treatment of obesity over the last 40 odd years. So presently, as I said, Medicare does not actually cover obesity, and there doesn't seem to be anything in the pipeline just yet for them to start covering that. So in conclusion, no Medicare coverage anytime soon, which should have quite a negative impact in terms of the perpetual sales of this drug. Likewise, the insurance companies are also picking up the stick. So at the moment, only about 25 employers currently cover the drugs, but this is looking to increase to a bigger number as time goes on. Insurance companies, though, try to make money out of their customers. And what's been shown that in the US, in the private practice, people change jobs every 3 to 4 years. It's also been shown that these drugs actually only really have long-term effects over a longer time period. So effectively, they don't want to cover you because they're not seeing the benefits and they are not actually making any money of you. So the insurance companies have basically been slow walking their way through the sector, and the fact that they don't want to cover people anytime soon. Something to keep an eye on, but it is having quite significant impacts on the health insurance sector. So let's move along a little bit and see some of the sectors outside of insurance that have actually been very negatively impacted. The first sector is the medtech sector. So during August, Novo Nordisk came out with 2 trials. One, the SELECT trial, and again, late in October of 23, the FLOW trial. And what these trials showed is, first of all, there was a 20% benefit for cardiovascular outcomes using GLP-1s. And then later, they showed huge impacts on the delay in kidney disease. And as you can expect, once this kind of data started coming out, all of the medtech companies involved in diabetes, sleep, orthopedics, and bariatric surgery tanked. If we fast forward, though, 6 months later, it's fair to say that a lot of these stocks have actually recovered. So the opportunity in the sector has actually passed. And as it was articulated by the CEO of Novo Nordisk, it seems like a bit of an overreaction. These are progressive diseases, and even if you start reducing people with obesity, there are many who have a progressed state of disease. In other words, as more and more of the addressable market continues to come forward, things like hip replacements and people living longer will continue to be opportunistic for the sector. So the medtech sector, as I said, has actually recovered quite strongly, and there has been no further opportunity to take advantage of it. But other sectors are not panning out as well. For example, the food and beverages sector. If you look at the blue lines, you'll see that these sectors have actually performed very negatively over the last 12 months. Now, one may argue one of the reasons is high interest rates, high inflation, and not being able to pass these costs on to individuals. But certainly GLP-1s has had an effect on it. The CEO of Walmart came out in October 23 and said they're starting to see a slight change in the food purchasing habits of individuals taking Ozempic. That day, the snacking share market caved. So if we just draw our attention to some of the incumbents within the sector, you have companies like Walmart and Procter & Gamble that have actually held up pretty well. But the snacking businesses or companies that are deeply in the crosshairs of the GLP-1 industry have actually performed very badly. Companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Mondelez. These companies, are directly, as I say, exposed to the sector. They are big businesses, and they're struggling to pass the costs on to other individuals at a time where volumes are starting to reduce. And so not all food and beverages companies are the same, and further analysis needs to be taken care of. So Nestle, for example, is far more transparent in terms of what they have in their portfolio, the nutritional value in their portfolio. Unilever recently have made 2 big disposals in margarine and tea, trying to get rid of some of their more unhealthy and less profitable sectors. And Danone has one of the healthiest portfolios in the universe, with over 90% of its portfolio that can be consumed daily. And other companies are starting to embrace the whole GLP structural change. So Conagra, in a recent call, started breaking down some of its product range, talking about some of the sectors or products that they had, which were higher risk. So things like crisps and pretzels and chocolates were negatively affected, whereas on the other side, beef jerky and popcorn, they look forward to being a positive contributor. But again, a lot of companies have been very slow to adapt. The CEO of Mondelez, and again, one of their most recent reports talks about the execution of their 4-pillar strategy over the coming years, where their core category of chocolates, biscuit, and baked snacks will continue to show growth. And the way he puts it is we're talking about a 1% volume effect 10 years down the road. And he said, at this stage, we're not really concerned about the long-term effects, and we'll continue doing what we've been doing best. But likewise, tobacco and alcohol has also been negatively affected. We're seeing changes, reductions in binge eating like behavior. And this is, again, having effects on not only those sectors, but other sectors. Gyms in January had one of the worst periods where people just stopped going to gym. Why go to gym if I can just inject myself and lose 15 to 25% of my body weight? But on the other side, you've also had some very positive beneficiaries. So leisure and industry that is associated with flying and holidaying has actually seen a very big uptick. People who were bedridden all of a sudden losing weight, deciding they want to go and buy new clothes, they want to buy lipstick, they want to look better, going on fancy holidays. So it's been very beneficial. The point being is that this is a movable feast. A lot of sectors are benefiting and a lot are being very negatively impacted. And one needs to be cognizant of where you are and whether this could be so disruptive that you need to step aside completely. We've identified 3 stocks which we think are actually very good buying opportunities presently. So the first one being Coca-Cola. Coke in the blue has always traded at a premium to the S&P. And for the first time in many years, you can see it's actually now trading in line with the MSCI market or the S&P market. Our view is quite basic in the sense that Coke has been through many disruptive periods and has such a good, strong brand awareness that any reduction in volume in their products will just lead to a price increase. And that should offset any type of margin depreciation or profitability. Also, Coke has come with the GLP angle, where you have very few no or low calories or 100 calories or less packaging, and it's attracting new users and drinkers to their market. But we think this is a great opportunity right now to buy a good quality business. Another stock that's been very negatively impacted is Diageo. Now, maybe it's a bit disingenuous to talk about GLP-1s just disrupting these sectors, because as I say, there's been a lot of other variants that are affected. So you've had, the COVID effect, the bullwhip effect, where during COVID, companies like Diageo did very well. But as we came out of COVID, we saw overstocking, and this has actually affected the company quite negatively. So profit warnings in Latin America and the Caribbean, and more recently, soft earnings in the US, has led to a derating of the company. But certainly the GLP angle has been negative in terms of sentiment, where we've had stories of people who are consuming, up to 7 pints of beer a day, and all of a sudden they're on these weight loss drugs and they feel like they just don't want to drink anymore. So that does have some kind of impact on people's mindset. But again, if you look at the derating of Diageo, this is the first time in many years that Diageo is actually trading at a discount to the MSCI World. And given the quality of the brand portfolio and the nature of the business, we think this is a fantastic buying opportunity. It's now the 5th biggest holding in the Credo Global Equity Fund. Then lastly, Hershey's chocolate. It's a very US-centric business. It flies straight in the face of GLP-1s. They make Reese's chocolate, they make Twizzlers, snacks effectively. And the company has suffered very negatively in 2023. The main reason actually for the depreciation in the share price has to do with the cocoa price, which has gone up about 70% in the last 6 months, putting huge pressure on margins and the underlying business. But having said that, the GLP-1 angle has again been very negative for the stock. Company that used to trade at a big premium to the S&P, now trading at a discount. So maybe a little bit too early, but again, quite an opportunity to buy a good quality business at a discount. So in summary, the potential for these new class of drugs for weight loss is enormous. As you've seen, it's been quite revolutionary. The runway and the excitement around this, as you can expect, has been sensational. However, I think we're a long way from structural changes in society. So in regard to the incumbents Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, it's quite difficult to get a grasp on whether they're overvalued, undervalued, or where we are in the cycle. But as I alluded to earlier in the presentation, these companies are now trading like growth stocks. In the case of Novo Nordisk, around 34 times PE, and in the case of Lilly, around 54 times. A lot of the good news is actually already priced in. Granted, there are other branches of healthcare that they're moving into, maybe some kind of cure for Alzheimer's or cardiovascular disease, which again brings another leg to the investment thesis for these companies, but it's just too early to say. Likewise, there are 2 other issues. One is they can't produce enough product right now. And as factories come online, they will sell out, but there will come a point where that peaks. And likewise, and probably more importantly, is competition is coming. There are now over 50 anti-obesity drugs in clinical development from 40 different companies. And this is only going to increase as the sector and the opportunity gets bigger. So from our side, we tended not to play in the stocks, and we're looking to take the other side in terms of the hunting ground for opportunities in other oversold stocks and sectors, which we think provide very good buying opportunity. So hopefully this has been informative and you've enjoyed the presentation. It's a fascinating sector. It's been incredible to watch these stocks and the outcome of the fallout in various other sectors. And it's something that we're keeping our eye on, making sure that we are well positioned within our own portfolio. Likewise, making sure that we don't get caught out by some kind of disintermediation, but likewise trying to buy stocks that we think are sensible, well valued, and are cheap. So thank you for your time, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Jarrod. That's been very interesting. If you'd like to find out more about the Credo Global Equity Fund, please contact your usual relationship manager. My contact details are also shown in the accompanying slides. The fund is available on a wide range of investment platforms, both in the UK and in South Africa. We also have the Credo Global Equity Feeder Fund available in South Africa, which enables investment directly in local currency. I hope that's been useful, and thanks for watching.